My name is Nancy Biwott. I work for an institution in Kigali, Rwanda, known as Carnegie Mellon University, as the Associate Director of Diversity and Inclusion, and also a proud ICD member for some time now. Really excited to be welcoming my long-term colleague and friend, Dr. Angella Ndaka, to share on the ethics of AI and to link that with community development. What do the advances in in AI mean for us in community development? So I think without further ado, and in the interest of time and to allow us more time to ask questions and to engage, I welcome Dr. Angella Ndaka.
Thank you, Nancy, for this nice introduction. I am trying to make sure that I have minimized who I can see on the screen so that I can be able to see my slides. Yeah, so my name, for purposes of introduction, my name is Angella Ndaka. I'm working as a director of the Center for African Epistemic Justice, but I'm also contributing in academia, and also I'm a national consultant with the Food Agriculture Organization of the UN, working on issues of gender and inclusion, particularly integrating the vulnerable communities into technologies that touch on AI and other emerging technologies. So other than that, I'm an award winner, Women in AI Awards, Asia Pacific countries, for advocating for cultural inclusion and cultural leadership. And I was also included in the list of 2023, the 100 top global brilliant women in AI ethics. Yeah, so I'm passionate about how AI is going to be entering into communities, how AI is going to be entering into alternative worlds, stemming from my PhD research that was looking into social ontologies that are shaping and are being impacted by artificial intelligence. So I was looking into issues that are basically saying that AI is not just a tool, but a socio-technical system. And that is what we are going to be discussing here, so that when we are adopting it in community development, it's not going to be a tool, but a system that we need to look into further, of those who own it and those who run it and those who shape it. So Nancy, without a waste of time, probably you can move it to the slides, and yeah, then I can talk more about what I'll be presenting here. Yeah, so I don't think I'll have much to talk about community development, because I'm sure most of you are experts in this particular space, and you understand community development even more than I do, although I've done bits and pieces, as Nancy has mentioned, in community development. But community development basically will entail a social and economic and environmental pillars, and that is what most of us keep oscillating around, because they converge together to talk about what the society needs and what the societal vulnerabilities entail. So it is about communities organizing together and to undertake initiatives that improve their lives. So it can be communities at different levels, or even communities that are collaborating with organizations, communities that are collaborating with governments, or even just people that are coalescing together at community level to talk about what they need and to improve their own lives and all that. So community development is a discipline that is already being under research in our institution, but it's also a practice, because that is what different organizations, either at family level, a community level, clan level in African setting, INGO level, even bilateral level, that is a focus they are doing in terms of practice and making sure that different vulnerable groups are reached out and their lives are improved. So most institutions in government and also in other organizations that are addressing community development, strive to address socioeconomic and environmental pillars of the society. And so all those ones are normally embedded in different strategic goals. You will realize that in your community organization or even in your research, your strategic goals are normally targeting, or they embed these particular 3 pillars, that is social, economic, and environment, within your goals. So I am as an expert in AI socio-technical systems. So I want to talk about very much how AI enters into our communities, because community development is about communities. But it is very important for us to understand what is AI in reality, and what is AI as it is framed, and what is AI as it appears in the books and all that. So AI and emerging technologies, as I see them, normally as a socio-technical expert, are expressions of power. And this is one of the technologies that is actually shifting power inequalities, or even shifting power. And it is likely to amass a lot of power to a few individuals. And it's already happening actually in our time. So there are tools that have physical existence. When we hear people talking about AI, we think about computers, we think about internet, we think about virtual systems, we think about, probably most of us have heard of ChatGPT, we think about Google, we think about Facebook, we think about so many other things. But what is AI? Because the idea is not that AI is Facebook or AI is ChatGPT. And because there will be so many of ChatGPTs that will come on board, there will be so many of Microsoft, of Google, of Amazon that will come on board. As we go, we will hear of so many innovations, because those are just parts of innovations of AI. So they are actually tools that have physical existence. Physical existence is just like the simple phone that you use every day in your house. It is a simple thing like a computer that you're using in your office. It is also as simple as the TV that you're using in your living room, and many other systems that are working within our systems, either in offices or in our homes. But those tools or those technologies also disappear in something that we call virtual invisible spaces. And in those virtual invisible spaces is some spaces that we cannot actually tell what is happening, because we could be able to tell what is happening with your phone. If I tap my phone, if I am able to touch it, open Google and all that, I can say what is happening. But beyond my tapping, there is what we call a digital imprint, or a digital footprint that I leave behind. What happened to that particular footprint? And that's why I'm talking about AI, our physical existence, but also disappear in what we call virtual invisible spaces. Now, those invisible spaces are spaces that are occupied by power, interests, and they have so many power voids that are beckoning to be occupied by those who know how to do it. So AI is entangled in a community's everydayness. And that is now where we talk about where AI now comes into the community. In our everyday life, AI lives with us, in us, and in our environment, in our lives, in a way that it looks normal. And sometimes it is very undistinguishable from who we are. Think of what a phone has become to you. A phone has become this thing that you can't leave behind, because virtually carries everything about you. It has your phone contact. It has it gives you direction to where you're going. It also has most of your bank applications. It has most of the applications that you use every day so that you can be able to live. And so a phone has become this item that you cannot live without. And then I've realized other things that are happening around our lives are, see the social media spaces that we are interacting with. We feel like we are entangled in them in a way that our lives, our careers, our everything depends on those particular spaces. Today, we depend on Google. We depend on Microsoft. Like, we can't use this computer without Microsoft Office or Microsoft applications. We can't use the computers without Google browsers. We can't use them without everything. So it is entangled in that community everydayness. Because again, community and community development is shifting to that particular to that particular space. Think about now this kind of entanglement in our office and our organizations. Think about the data that we generate every day for the communities that we serve. Think about how that data is analyzed, how we apply different AI applications to analyze it, to manage the data. And the question is, we even think beyond the analysis of data. What happens to that particular data that we are using from our communities, and it is being applied on AI, or AI is being applied to analyze it and all that? We are using AI to monitor conflict. We are using AI to monitor environment in our spaces. We are using AI to monitor vulnerability. We are also talking about AI being used to manage GBV or even to mitigate GBV. AI is going to the health systems, and it's going to be actually interacting with vulnerable and very private health data. AI is going to education systems and is going to be interacting with very vulnerable groups in their data, that is like children, and their vulnerabilities, including the health information, their understanding, their learning information, and everything that's around that. And so when I say AI is entangled within our community's everydayness, then it means that it is sitting with us every day, and it has been sitting with us for a very long time. So AI has the ability to transform communities positively, no doubt about that. But that's one of the biggest stories that we know, that AI is going to be big. It's going to shape, it's going to improve education, it's going to improve environment, it's going to improve health, it's going to improve so many things. But also, the story that is not very dominant is that AI has the ability to polarize the same communities that we are trying to serve. And I will be giving some of the examples in terms of how that polarization is likely to happen, from issues of economy to issues of social, and then to environment. And then we can be able to discuss that further, because I know different community initiatives are serving different goals from economic, social, and environment. So concerning community, AI is not just a tool, but a socio-technical infrastructure. So, and when I talk about socio-technical infrastructure, we are talking about behind the tool that we're using, behind Google, behind ChatGPT, behind all these other things, even the smallest of that application that you think you're using that has been developed by a local techie, behind it are infrastructures of power and people who own big parts of those infrastructure, like the data centers that are where these data are converging and are analyzed, and they are stored, and also where these operations are happening, and where that data converges, the activities that are happening there, we need to understand what is happening actually beyond the data that goes beyond our normal computer system and all that. So what is AI? It is important that we understand what it is. So AI consists of computer systems and that can perform tasks that are usually like human beings. So those who have been working on AI, they are actually pursuing to achieve machines that can have what we call equal to or even more than human intelligence. And so they, most of them are very ambitious actually to reproduce, to want to reproduce human intelligence in machines, or even some systems that can actually replace humans in terms of some of the tasks that they can do. And so AI has been in existence since 1950s. I know it sounds funny that I'm saying that it has been in existence since 1950s, but it has been in existence since then. It's only that the type of AI has come to light since the 2010s, 2015, around thereabout, when there was a key breakthrough in terms of what AI can do, and now it came on force, and in the last 5 to 10 years, there has been this big hype and big blotting of AI in a way that we can see it is performing a lot of things in our system. It's entering in a very forceful way in our communities. And we are at a point that the way it's entering in us, people have to act very fast because we are likely to be swallowed in the madness of it without actually understanding what it is. So AI requires human intelligence, ideally. It cannot grow on its own. It requires human intelligence. It requires, has to feed it with our visual perception. It requires speech recognition. It requires issues like decision-making abilities of human beings. It requires translation between languages, and it also requires so many other things, like us, either consciously or unconsciously, feeding it with our patterns, like behavior data, like our audio data, like image data, and all that. So to acquire this, massive data is normally required. And so AI uses that massive data to model itself, or to be modeled, or to be annotated. And it is used to train, the data is used to train computer systems to acquire some level of human intelligence. Now, to stop at that point, this explains why there is a bit of a hype of people talking about data. We need data. You have heard of people say, or for us to be included as Africans, or for us to be considered, or for us to be part of this big AI growth and advancement, then we need to have our data on board. And I will raise a question about that aspect of data. We need the massive data, but who needs the massive data? And those are some of the questions that I want us to be asking as we talk about issues of power and AI. Now, because of AI's autonomous nature, so because of the way AI is autonomous and we cannot see it, normally many people believe what they are told about it. So it's viewed as objective, and it is viewed as a tool that can be able to help eliminate human bias. But the question is it doing that? Now, I need to highlight what AI can do so that I may not sound like a doomist. People normally say that we have been over-focusing on the doom side of AI. But AI has a lot that it can do. It can be able to achieve a lot in our everyday community initiatives. For example, those who are working in agriculture, artificial intelligence can help in terms of improving farm-level decision-making and productivity in agricultural value chains. I had an opportunity of doing my PhD within an agricultural setup, and I was looking at what artificial intelligence can do, including developing tools that can actually train communities that are completely lay, who do not understand how to use computer tools, to be able to make very key farm level decisions, like what particular branch to prune when they are pruning. So it can actually be used to develop something like an augmented reality tool, or even a virtual reality tool, one of which can actually train people who have never done any farm work, which need a lot of expertise, to be able to learn how to do it. Or it can also direct a person to learn how to do farm work like pruning and picking and fruitlet thinning and all that. And that is something that can actually be done to improve what we are calling agricultural production. At value chain levels, AI is being used for sorting issues, like sorting what fruits are good for selling, which ones need to be, and grading them. It's also being used for other issues like actually reducing the labor baggage on the farm, and other things like monitoring farm level diseases and all that, so that a farmer can be able to make decisions concerning their farm at the comfort of their homes and all that. So AI can actually be used very much to improve farm level decision making, as well as productivity in all agricultural value chains. It can go deep in so many ways. In Kenya, for example, we are having AI being used to do what we call e-extension services, providing advice to farmers through WhatsApp, and they get to know what they need to do. They can ask questions to AI, and AI can respond to them and all that. AI can also be used to improve government decision-making through data sorting, classification analysis, and decision-making. Yeah, depending on how massive data is. Most of the time, government decision-making has been skewed in the past because probably the data was not able to be sorted and all that. But now AI can be applied to sort that data, identify areas in which governments need to intervene faster, and which groups it need to reach and all that. And so in its ideal situation, AI can actually improve government decision-making. AI can also be used to conduct dangerous experiments, for example, experiments that require chemicals that are hazardous and they may not, or places which are unreachable by human beings. For example, AI can actually conduct experiments that are in places that cannot be able to be reached by human beings, like the space, and also deep sea divings and experiments that are happening in deep seas, deeper forests and crevices where human beings cannot reach. AI can actually do that particular work. AI is also being used to detect and treat rare diseases. It actually exhibited a big breakthrough in terms of detection of new forms of cancers, and also accuracy in terms of detection of those cancers and treatment. Other areas AI can be used to improve independence of people with disabilities, improve their ability to use some of the parts of their bodies that they could not use earlier. For example, we have seen AI being used to help people who could not talk to be able to communicate using a machine. And we also having new developments that AI could be be developing new, like support assistant for people with disabilities and older people. And also, most importantly, AI can be used to improve the efficiency of office work. Most of the work the repetitive work that was being done in offices and in communities now can be able to be done by AI, because you just command it, like it can write for you a letter, it can write for you and minutes, it can do for you so many things and all that. And so in our communities, we may find other aspects of AI that can, where AI can be used and where AI can be applied, particularly to remove the repetitive, boring, quote unquote, boring tasks of human beings and all that. But what is the inside of AI? I need that slide, please. What is the inside of AI? Now, behind the AI are embedded design and data bias. What AI has been done, or how AI has been developed, let's start from where it's coming from. AI is really very much originally a Western conceptualization. Western conceptualization is that most of the dominant companies that have come with AI and who were early developers and early adopters of AI were coming from the global north. And so the conceptualization about the design and also the data that has been used to train AI is basically biased towards those particular groups of people that are living in those particular spaces and all that. And on top of that, the embedded design bias also comes in different shades. It can come in a shade of race. It also comes in a shade of gender, that most of these developments and designs are done by men as compared to women, because statistically, we have very few women who are actually developing or in those particular design spaces of AI. And so they come in terms of gender shade. It also comes as racial shades, but also we have the idea of knowledge sharing. Knowledge shades, I mean, most of the people that are here are in the social sciences, but those who design AI are mostly scientists. And scientists come from, if I go to the academic side of it, scientists are more positivist. They think in terms of determinism of technology. And so the thinking beyond that AI or science can be proven in any other way other than, or objectivity can be proven in any other way than scientifically trying it in the lab is beyond them. And so we find that particular bias of knowledge missing, because there are many other aspects. For those who have worked in community, particularly like us, you know that there are so many things that you can prove using social conceptualization or using social persuasive arguments that do not have to be proven by science. And so, so you find that particular bias also is embedded in AI in terms of design. So, and then now the data historically has been biased. And how would data be biased? Part of it is the fact that a lot of data that is training AI is emerging from the global north or from the privileged populations, like the male gender, or from the privileged populations in some societies, like in some societies where we have biases of race or biases of deep biases of gender or deep biases caused by conflict and such biases. So those that's another one level of data bias, but also there are other levels of data bias. how was data created? Because sometimes you may find that there is a lot of data that has been collected in some spaces like Africa and other global South spaces. But there is a new and emerging, and as a person who has been looking very much into how data is developed and how data is collected and how data is interpreted and how data is disseminated, there is a lot of information in terms of how data is sifted to fit within certain frameworks. In our conventional research, for those who are in the academia, the conventional research frameworks are dominantly developed and approved by the global north. And so it actually negates, or it actually subjugates most of methodologies that are recognized within some spaces and the indigenous communities like Africa and other indigenous communities like the people, the indigenous people in Australia, the Maori people in New Zealand, and even the ones that are in Canada. There is a lot of their original indigeneity that is missing in terms of data, because when data goes out of our hands, or depending on who is running the research project, who collects the data and all that, they interpret it with a bias and with assumptions that they carry from where they are coming from and all that. So that is another level of data bias. But also there is a lot of other issues like who has been running the show. For example, I've been writing a paper on accounting systems and that are being used in Africa. Most of them are Western. And so most of them are developed with a Western bias and all that. So do they recognize that we have indigenous accounting systems? And actually what, even in our development sector, we have been calling informal. What is informal? And who calls it informal? And those are some of the questions I'm just throwing around so that we can start thinking in terms of how machines are going to be learning bias from how we present what is available in the society or what has been historically defined as objective, or historically defined as superior, or historically defined as national, as recognized, or as a standard. And so the world is so universalized, but ideally they are just hypernodes of some particular people who are in power. And it leaves the perspectives of the other people at the, and that is where a lot of bias in terms of design and data is injected. So that's on a subject of another day. We can discuss that further and probably critically discuss it and argue around it, depending from where you're coming from. But also the other point is that AI is changing societal values. I've been a person who has been studying how closely what is happening in the spaces of social media. And ideally, I look at our African society, and I don't want to talk about another society because I am an African and I want to focus on the African society. I've been focusing on how AI is being used to change societal values within the African setting and all that. Social media, for us, it was presented like a small space where we could create our own villages. In the African setting, we understand what is a village. And actually a village is a very basic component of community development, because it is in the village where we meet, we converge, we talk about ourselves, we share our needs, and we discuss those needs. We try to find we try to find solutions to those particular societal needs. We even address community development issues at personal level, at village level, and all that. And so social media was presented to us as small global villages where we could meet, talk, share our values, and all that. But then at some point, AI is injected in social media, and it starts creating a society that is seeking for rewards. And the society that is seeking for rewards is being rewarded for driving certain content, and that content is the one that is being used to drive adverts for the technology companies to be able to thrive and make profits. I want to give you an example. I come in social media like Facebook, and I have picked up a picture of a naked woman who was stripped naked in the village by villagers for allegedly being accused of witchcraft. I'm giving a solid example of Africa. And then this woman is posted on Facebook. And because this naked body of a woman and witchcraft are two sensationalizing subjects, AI picks that particular sensational content, which is a combination of sexism and another aspect of racial bias, and then combines the two to create a sensational, and picks that and makes it a sensational post or content that receives more likes. So AI is being used in places like Facebook and TikTok to drive that content. That content goes viral. It receives more repostings, it receives more engagement. And in the engagement, we are having people castigating these particular people, including victimizing a victim of that particular post and all that. Who is that particular woman whose nakedness should have been protected according to societal African values and all that. But then it drives that agenda, and the company that is behind that is Facebook, gains in terms of their people that are engaging with advertisements that are selling some product and all that. It also gains from picking up this data to develop and entrench deeper biased values concerning what Africa is or what women are or whatever it is. So there is a lot of changing societal values in such a way that today I don't care what I do when I don't care what happens when I post a post, as long as it gains for me the likes, or I get what we call algorithmic rewards from it and all that, at the expense of a vulnerable person. It can be at the expense of a person who has been sexually abused, who needs to be protected. It can be at the expense of a vulnerable community that needs to be protected. It can be at the expense of a vulnerable child that needs to be protected. And that is actually how we are seeing a lot of societal values being compromised and being changed within our African settings, so that we are becoming immune to what other people could be going through. As long as I get content online that can go viral, I get more likes, probably get rewarded by the companies that are running this agenda. But again, also they get rewards for their profits and life continues. And so that is how AI is changing societal values. And there are so many examples that I could give. AI could compromise democracies and citizens' agencies through disinformation and misinformation. I think that's something that a lot of people are talking about now. You have seen that we are seeing a lot of increase of deepfakes, videos that are being produced by politicians, created by AI, but allegedly they look like very real videos that are produced by certain politicians, driving a certain agenda, or even trying to print a certain picture about other politicians and all that, or trying to print a certain picture about anything. And this is actually compromising because of the believability of some of those defects. It's actually likely to compromise the agencies of citizens in terms of how are they likely to vote? How is the voting pattern likely going to be? All right, my slide have disappeared and all that. Yeah, how is the voting pattern likely to be? And do we have a hope of true democracy in the future and all that? Okay, that is part of democracy. And I think we can talk more about in terms of agencies. AI is also changing the dynamics of war. How is war going to be looking like, and conflict? We have been talking a lot about people talking about AI being able to control war and conflict. But in episodes that have been happening in Africa, actually AI was used to fuel conflict, like in Ethiopia. There were recorded examples of artificial intelligence being used to drive the conflict and to fuel the conflict deeper between the warring communities in Ethiopia. Now, another part that we are likely to see the hindsight of AI is environmental costs. And this is an area that I'm passionate about, because I can hear a lot of people talking about AI for environment, AI for climate crisis and all that. But artificial intelligence in itself, and even in the wake of generative AI, artificial intelligence in itself is inducing very massive production of carbon and all that, and no one is still talking about, no one is talking about how we are going to reduce that. There have been episodes where Google is saying that AI itself can regulate the carbon emissions that comes with it. But it is a deeper conversation, because we need to talk about the green energy. We need to talk about how are we balancing the green energy versus actually the energy that is being used by data centers in AI and all that. Not even talking about that, we're also talking about the copious amount of water used by data centers. Already we are in Spain experiencing dry spells because of data centers pending massive water. And in the African context, we are going to be talking about the rare metals that are likely to be exploited, the exploitation of metals like cobalt, lithium, and such, and also the degradation of the lands and the landscapes that are going to be affected by that, and the power dynamics that are going to be around it, because most of these places where rare metals come from are still conflict zones, which are being extracted by powerful companies from the global north. And they reap and they leave communities struggling with issues of land that has been messed up and other environmental issues that they have to deal with and all that. And on top of that, we are experiencing bigger challenges like extraction of labor. Like in Kenya, we are talking about someone working for as low as 50 cents per hour. And they are the ones that are training AI data. And they are working in the worst environments. I had an opportunity of talking with a young man who is advocating for that. And they were talking about how so many young people walk to work spaces. They walk there. They do not have enough money to feed. Yet they are the ones that are busy training powerful tools for companies like OpenAI, like Google, and like and such big companies. And they are threatened people, because they are told, if you talk about what is happening in this particular space, they are sacked. Their accounts are disabled and all that. And that is what we call labor extraction, because it is introducing the new forms of slavery and whatever. Now, economic polarization is another side of AI that, and this is the most hidden one, because most tech companies do not want people to hear, because they really need the data. They really need people to give them data. So when data is released to most companies, there are questions that we never ask. How are they using the data? And when they use that data, how do they gain? And how do owners of data gain? There's an issue of people talking about data like it is an owned product or it is a democratic product. I don't know how to go by. I find that one a very shaky ground to know, because if I give my data, for example, or if government releases my data to an organization or to a company, and that company uses that data to train their product, to train their tools to produce a product which they are going to sell to make profits, then how is that different from a company coming to my land, extracting gold from there, going to make gold chain and selling it to make profits, yet I am the one who owned that gold and I never benefited from it. And so there is an issue in terms of how economically are people going to gain from issues of data that is being extracted from them. There is a lot of data that is going to be extracted from the farms, data that is going to be extracted from health sector, data that is going to be extracted from health, from government systems. And also, even those who are at community level, the organization, there's a lot of data that is emerging from the people that you are serving in those particular communities. That data goes to a company, it helps them make profit. They become more powerful, but what are the returns of those data to these particular communities and all that? Because again, on the other side of the coin is that this data is being used to classify and categorize people according to their Uber capital. So that if I am working with the United Nations and my data goes there, then my data can be sold by a tech company to an insurance company, so that an insurance company can reach out to me with a product that is designed for a person who is working with the United Nations. But the communities that are down there, they also categorized in another level where they are deemed or treated as risk factors or risk groups or risk communities, which now the companies either are going to develop products for them, or they may decide that those ones do not deserve any products. And that is where levels of exclusions are going to be happening in the near future, and they are already happening in some sectors. So economic polarization is one of the key things that I think the community development has been very key about. But how is that turning around in terms of the time of AI? So how is AI framed for development? I know you have heard a lot about AI for D, AI for development, AI for good, AI for social, AI for what, and all that. And there is a lot of framing that is going around. So AI is positioned as a powerful tool, and it actually, most people are talking about it's going to be able to tackle most of the world's most challenging social problems. But the question is that, are people considering how AI could be reintroducing these same social problems that the world is framing, or the world is hyping that AI is able to solve? So there is a hype that foregrounds AI to promote unlimited growth, and that is what we don't want to talk about. There is unlimited growth, and whose growth is it? It is growth that optimistically drives unlimited growth of technology, and the technology benefits particular few capitalist companies that are running technology. So at the end of the day, the profits go to a few people. And that's why today, in this age, we are hearing now the top most powerful people are the tech owners. Or, I mean, there are people that seem to be losing ground. Most of the powerful and most richest people are tech owners. However, the framing also ignores the embedded cultures of fear. There is a lot of concerns that have been raised by communities. Some of them have been ignored, others have been rubbished, others have been silenced. For example, I will keep saying Kenya, now, like the cultures of slavery that are being introduced in countries like Kenya and other developing countries are being silenced, including by our own governments and all that. And so there is this argument that are these people not benefiting from tech work? But ideally is that people are being exploited and people are working as slaves. Slavery is back, but now it is digital slavery that is happening. Now, this framing has also been elevating narratives of those in power at the expense of the non-dominant and unpopular socio-technical imaginaries that get silenced, slowed, and eradicated. So if there are different opinions concerning AI, and if there are other imaginaries or like alternatives that could be involved in terms of making AI sustainable, they are getting slowed, they are getting eradicated, they are getting silenced. And it is just about who is in power, who is able to fund what, and who is able to push for which agenda. Now, the dominant groups have a say in terms of how tech is done, but also they have a say in terms of how ethics is being developed. Because, and this is a shame, that most development organizations are in bed with large tech companies. And it is unfortunate that I will speak from a point of a scholar. It is unfortunate that the power dynamics may never be addressed if it is the tech companies who are driving their profitability agenda, who are the ones who are investing in the development of ethical modalities that are going to shape how AI is going to emerge. Because, of course, we know from the development sector, those who fund our development also have a lot of say in terms of the modalities and the goals and the objectives that we meet as people who are in development. So as a result, we are having AI and AI companies and AI ethical modalities that are reproducing historical legacies of colonialism, capitalism, sexism, and all this other sexism that we hear about, like, yeah. So, and then patriarchy. So its reliance, the fact that AI relies on big data and the controlled space by those who hold the data. Those who hold the data is not us. We give the data, but they are those who hold the data. And the politics and interests that shape how technology emerges make it a tool for reproducing the same human biases, human and moral attributes and ethical issues that development sector is trying to address. So we find ourselves at the cross lines now as development sector. Do we want to address the problems that we are addressing, or are we watching again the gains that community development has been gaining, being washed down by AI and the AI industry and whatever? Or are we going to fight and make sure that the civil societies, including the most basic ones at the community level, understand what they are up against? Because in the near future, those who are in power are going to be in full control, and we may not be able to control the agenda anymore concerning AI. Next, Nancy. So I want you to look at this picture that I put here. I put it deliberately. I know there have been so many pictures that have been in the previous slide, but I put this one deliberately because this is what AI can do. Some time ago, someone tried to create or try to prompt artificial intelligence to create Barbies. Barbie is this baby dolls created for different children from different parts of the world. And this is what AI created for a Barbie that comes from Southern Sudan. If you look at this Barbie, it's a beautiful black girl with long braids, pure representation of who we are. And a nice dress that is very African, nice black African color, but something is amiss. This is a child who is carrying a gun, an AK-47, and some, I don't know whether there are some weapon or some other things that are tied to that particular whatever. So it represents a young South Sudanese girl as a girl who is introduced to weapons at very early. And that is how AI understands the South Sudan. And it presents a South Sudanese child as a war, how do I put it? A child who is just ready to fight, or a child who is exposed to weapons, or a child who is actually dangerous to other children. Let's say it in black and white and all that. And so that is a bias that AI carries for every other community. And there were so many Barbies that were produced and all that. I won't compare this Barbie with the Barbie that was produced probably from the UK or from America and all that. It was a beautiful, nice, innocent, sweet girl. This does not look like a sweet, nice, innocent girl, although we know in South Sudan, the young girls are vulnerable and sweet and nice and all that. And so who is gaining in AI particularly? The big gainers of AI are large tech companies and early adopters of AI. So they do it by what I was telling you. They pick the data, they amass a lot of data. Most of the data they are keeping is a lot. And it is it is just being kept waiting to be used to train newer products and all that. And so the new products they produce, the more money they make, the more profits they make and all that. Early adopters of AI are also gaining in terms of that. They gain traction in terms of how they can manage and manipulate data and all that. But then who are the big losers of AI? The marginal groups, those who lack Uber capital, those who are after being classified, categorized and all that. And also even the normal people, middle class, upper class and all that, whose data is being used every day to create these good products which can be sold. But also I'm worried about the vulnerable groups, like the sick, when their data goes out there, the children, elderly, and rural people who have no idea when they go to Facebook, how much of their data goes out there. Even they don't, like in African space, people do not even understand issues of privacy and all that. So most of what they are posting, most of the content they are doing, they're just doing it for the sake of black. This is Facebook, I'm in Facebook. But they don't know that how much that data can be used to harm people. Actually, part of what we are calling digital mediated gender-based violence has been stemming from simple posts that are done by people. When such a post goes viral, people are exposed to being harmed by others. And we have seen an increase of femicide that is connected to digitally mediated GBV or digital posts that are done against women. So that is a major concern now. So there is need for government and civil societies now to start focusing on power assemblage of AI. Instead of just running, because there is a big hype of how can we use AI to improve ourselves? How can we use AI to improve our organization? That is the low level kind of conversation that we are having with community organizations. But I would advise that in as much as we may want to use AI, which I'm using, I'm not refusing myself, I use it every day for my own benefit and for my organization benefit. But again, also, can we focusing on the power assemblage that is happening behind the scenes and in the invisible? so that we can be able to address issues of inequalities and polarization that are going to be happening in the future. So sustainable AI and inclusive AI is our imperative of all organizations, whether we are bilateral, intergovernmental organizations, INGOs, or whether we are a civil society, faith-based organization, or even a simple community organization, community-based organization. It is our imperative to ensure that we are talking about sustainable and inclusive AI. And that sustainability and that inclusiveness should be defined by the parameters that are looking into addressing these needs, perceptions, interests, and other forms of contributions that are made by the African community, particularly the grassroots people. Because most of the time, even when we talk at our different levels, I am in academia, but as a woman in academia, can I also claim to be able to represent a woman at the grassroots of the community? Because I need to hear her perceptions. I need to hear how she's undergoing, what she's undergoing through AI, and what she's experiencing in different social spaces as she's interacting with, which are using AI. Next, Nancy. So, what do I propose in terms of achieving sustainable and inclusive AI? There are so many, I would say there are so many initiatives and recommendations and proposals that have been made by different organizations, like talk about IDRC, GIZ. There are many people who are working in the African space, Fair Work, and other different organizations that are working within this particular space. And they are all proposing different ideas, which are good and which we could also be able to look into and all that. And in all this, I do not want to be very specific on what we can adopt and what we cannot adopt, but I want to propose something that I'm working on, a 3 model for regulating and governing AI, which adopts 3 key principles of responsible, responsiveness, and responsible. Responsible is we should, and it's just questions that I'm throwing to you. Responsible is we should be asking very simple question. Is AI and the resources and the data, is AI companies using data and the resources that are provided by people in a way that responds to the people's interest? Because data belongs to people. Data does not belong to tech companies. Data that is collected from people, from their farms, from their hospitals, from their governments, from wherever, it belongs to them. And so it is a very simple principle that if I give out my data, if I give a consent in any space for my data to be used, then that data must be used in a way that I approve of it, not that it disappears somewhere in the invisibility and I can never get to know where it is being sold, who is using it, who is preparing which products, and how they are profiting. I should be able to get to know all that information. And I know that many people are not really for that idea, but then again also, it is the way that the society is being introduced into what we call economic and wealth inequalities and all that. Responsiveness is the second principle that I would advocate for, is AI and the tools that are being produced responding to the needs and values of people. We are all different values that are situated. Our values in UK, our values in New Zealand, our values in Asia Pacific, our values in Canada and the larger America are not the same as our values in Africa. So is AI responsive to those particular values and needs in this particular context, so that we're not just developing tools, for the hype of it, but we are developing tools that are responsive to the needs, interests, and values of people. And then the last principle that I would propose is responsibility or responsible. Responsible means that AI and the tools that are being developed, number one, they are able to respond to communities and societies that are different from the societies where they were conceived. And that is the aspect that looks into colonization. Because most of the tools that have been developed are actually, like I said in my first statement, they are expressions of power. And just like the historical legacies of knowledge has been produced to subjugate and to silence other forms of knowledge. So does AI recognize that there is existence of spaces that are not in line with these particular knowledges where AI is produced? And do those companies, are they willing to recognize existence of those worlds, those alternative worlds, and articulate those particular knowledges? Like, for example, Africa indigenous knowledges, how are they being integrated and articulated in this particular AI? I talked to someone working with a large tech company here in Kenya the other day, and I was shocked when they were saying that, unfortunately, we are able to bring the indigeneity or whatever because AI understands data. But ideally, AI can even understand perspective, because if AI can pick a viral sexist post and content, then it can be able to pick my indigenous perspectives. And so the aspect of understanding, responding, and recognizing alternative knowledges that hold legitimate claims and that may not have been recognized historically, then we are going to have what we call responsible AI. So this 3 model, which is still in development, is what I will be looking to develop a model for what I will call data justice in Africa. So thank you so much for listening to me, and I hope it was fruitful to you and it was resourceful to you. I call for questions.
Thank you so much, Angela. Very thought-provoking session, yeah? And since we don't have a lot of time, I think I'll just directly open the floor for questions or people seeking for more clarity in specific areas. Thank you so much for that session. Any questions? I didn't want to take the slot for myself.
Comment from my side. I think it is a brave presentation and very comprehensive, and I think you touched the nerve of it. I like it. I think the hype around AI and what you addressed in the hindsight is sort of well balanced. What I do think is there's a default in AI, and I'd like to hear your comment on that. The default is that AI as a language model is continuously, it molds the information that it presents on those people's information that uses it most. So it's sort of a self-perpetuating model. And that is actually what you addressed at the end. And that means that there will always be a bias towards people that uses it most in the responses, which means that Mali will probably never have an equal input as we have from the USA. But as a comment, thanks.
Thanks so much. And Angela, before you respond, let's pick the 2 other questions, starting with Dominic.
Thank you so much. First of all, Angela, thanks a lot for this very insightful and rich presentation. I would have one question for you, which is in terms of the historic perspective of introducing new technology. I think there are a lot of parallels. There are always opportunities and risks when a new technology is introduced. It was the same with the steam machine. Now we have artificial intelligence. And every time there are side effects, some of which you have mentioned, like exploitation of labor, environmental impact, etc. So my question to you is, are there any learnings? Is there any research to take this historic perspective when looking at AI? Are there any learnings from the past we can apply? Any work around this?
Thank you so much, Dominic. And lastly, Abdul, for this session, the question, please.
Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. My question is in the area you have the facilitator has just talked about African indigenous knowledge and AI. I don't know, what can she suggest? What can you suggest in the interim now, since we are now at a very big crossroad? What can we suggest for researchers, community development workers, community practitioners? What can you suggest? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for those questions. Over to you, Angela, for the responses for the 3 questions.
Yeah, I think I can start with the first one. What can we suggest concerning indigeneity and all that? Just going back to in terms of what I raised as a concern is the fact that indigenous or indigeneity or indigenous knowledge, which have legitimate claims, have really what I call fenced out. Many times you hear people say that it's not possible and all that. But what can we do? We have Africans that are developing AI. And most of the time I want to challenge an African to think in terms of what works for the indigenous African person. What is that technology? Because I will not tell you that there will be a technology that you will call indigenous. But I want to pick an example of a previous technology that may not be AI. For instance, money and mobile money technology has permeated the whole of Africa. And actually, that is a technology that has taken some time to be understood within the other worlds that are outside Africa. I know that. Why did that technology work? And why is that technology working even now? I am in Kenya currently. And the last 4 years, between the last 4 years, I was in New Zealand and back to Kenya. I realized I came back and everything virtually can be paid or can be transacted using mobile money technology. And everyone, including the last of the oldest, even a 90-year-old woman who has never stepped in school, can be able to use mobile money technology. Now, the mobile money technology as a way of integrating itself in the simplest community initiatives and community organized initiatives, which are not necessarily formal. Most of them are very informal. So the informalization, it fits very well within the informalized system and all that. And so that was a technology that was developed by, the original prototype was done by a Kenyan young man who just thought about a mother in the last village of, say, Kitui or even Makueni or wherever, where there is no bank, there is no nothing. And they introduced something that could be able to serve those indigenous communities and their indigenous needs in a way that it integrates so well with their interest and their businesses that are not necessarily formal. So that is a technology that is not formal. But how do Africans that are generating or that are coming up with AI? How are they given what do we call it? How do they create a space for themselves within the technology generation and development in a way that they are going to come up with algorithms or even other tools that can actually understand and integrate and recognize those particular different worlds that are created within the indigenous systems? So that is a question I'm throwing and a challenge I'm throwing to technology developers, because I believe it can be done. If it was done for mobile money, for a very long time, we were struggling with Western Union, we were struggling with MasterCard, we were struggling with Visa card and the formal banking systems. But now, Kenyans can bank themselves within their mobile phones and all that. Not Kenyans only, but also the whole of Africa, because that system has gone through the whole of Africa. So it's a challenge for us to think about those solutions, because it is possible, it can be done, but we also need tech developers from Africa to, how do I call it? To disentangle themselves from the universalized system and start thinking about AI and thinking with it creatively and focusing on the needs within the African systems. Now, someone asked about work that is talking about historical legacies of technology and all that. There are several people who have written, and I struggled. In my writing, I struggled to find work that had been done by Africans concerning the legacies of technology and historical legacies of technology. And now currently, there is a lot of emerging work that is coming from a lot of professors from South Africa, but also different people. But I must say that most of the work that I have interacted with that talks about historical legacies of technology have been done by some people from the global West. One of the guys that I've liked what he has written about technology and the legacy, colonial legacies, is Mark Graham. And there is another one, I can't remember his name. You could read work by Tui Smith from New Zealand, who has written and has integrated methodologies of research, but also brings technology into the picture. But anyway, I probably would be allowed to share some of the work because it was not at the back of my head to share it. I mean from here. So I could pick bits and pieces of what has been done or what has been shared concerning those legacies and all that. What the first questioner asked about how the dominant groups or the dominant participants are likely to be shaping AI. I agree with you. And that is why the inclusion dynamics or the inclusivity or the digital inclusion should be one of the most delicate issues that needs to be handled. Because again, like you said, we need people that are coming from countries like Mali. You gave an example of Mali. That they need to feature here. They need to participate. Because AI is shaped by patterns and data from certain people. And the dominant participants are definitely going to be shaping the narrative. And the same is happening, like now in most of our world, AI is being shaped by the younger people versus older people who are not participating in this particular space. So most of perspectives are coming from older people compared from younger people compared to older people. So there are those shades of exclusion, inclusion dynamics and all that. But then again, also when we are being included also, we should be asking, how do we get included in a way that we also benefit from the inclusion? Because again, it's one thing to enter into this hyper object. It's another thing to benefit from being within the hyper object. Because again, inclusion could just mean that I'm just bringing data. for AI companies to make money, and that's it. So that's what I would think about the dynamism about inclusion. And that's the more reason why I advocate for a serious research and engagement of the civil society in a way that they can understand what are the dynamics of inclusion, what are the power inequalities in there, but how do we make sure that inclusion happens in a way that people benefit from it and not get more excluded from the benefits of AI.
Thank you so much. Yes, I think you've handled it so well and given us some really nice food for thought in terms of unpacking how we can really understand and implement inclusion, because currently I think it's been more about access, but now you're in those tables, you're discussing this with the people, but what next? How do you ensure the benefits also are felt by all the parties that need to experience that? So thank you so much for that. I'll pass the mic back to our chair, Daniel, to take us to the next step. And thank you for giving us additional minutes to just go into these topics. Like I said, Angela, really amazing session. We appreciate your time. Thank you. And for all of us here.
Thank you, too.
Thank you so much, Nancy and colleagues. Thanks so much to Angela for taking us through this session, quite thought-provoking. Before I close, Jim, you had your hand up. If you can have a quick one.
So, just very briefly, Daniel, thanks for the few minutes. I'm speaking from a UK context, but people might like to explore a case where it's called the post office scandal, where hundreds of people were convicted of stealing money through the local post office, hundreds, and it was found that the system, in a sense, which was judging them, was wrong, was incorrect, and the whole people's convictions have to be overturned. So it's a very, very interesting example. It's a UK example, but it highlights the misuse of information and how information through technology can actually present a wrong picture. But it's very, very serious here. Something like 600 people, in a sense, were convicted. That led to some people taking their own lives, and they found out the system was wrong. So people might like to explore it through Google or some other ways. So just for interest, it connects too much to a very, very interesting talk today. Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks so much, Jim, and thanks for that insight. Colleagues will appreciate that this is some virgin territory for us. We've been talking about how to do community development, but now we are getting to the interface with the artificial intelligence. Most of the time, we may not see the possibility, but Angela has made it so easy for us to see the possibilities that are available for us to influence and to deconstruct our ideologies. And to a large extent, even as we look at our discipline, then we can see the opportunities for decolonizing the process through artificial intelligence, and even to deconstruct some of the perspectives and the way we are shaping the narrative in community development. You realize that we have completely overshot our time. Normally we work with 90 minutes, but we are already past the hour. Thank you for the intentions. And I think I would wish we leave it at this point. The next webinar, the 37th edition, is going to be on community wealth building by Center for Local Economic Strategies, being presented for the United Kingdom. Be on the lookout, and let's continue engaging and shaping our discourse and our discipline and practice. Let's give Angela a round of applause as we close. And thanks to Nancy for chairing us, and also thanks to Ritu Nanda from India, who is hosting us today instead of Jessica, who is traveling. Ritu Nando is a trustee for Southeast Asia and supporting us today. Thank you so much, and Enjoy your day, enjoy your evening, whatever the time you are in.